He's been missing 3 weeks. So I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs about Amy Coney Barrett's previous decisions. She is a University of Notre Dame Juris Doctor. She's a Roman Catholic. She has 7 children, and at least 2 of those are adopted. In June of 2020, Barrett wrote a 40-page dissent when the majority upheld a preliminary injunction against the Trump administration's controversial public charge rule, which heightened the standard for obtaining a green card. In Barrett's dissent, she argued that any non-citizen who was disenrolled from government benefits may have been confused about the nature of the applications but were not entitled. The vast majority of people subject to the rule are not eligible for government benefits in the first place, her opinion stated. Barrett departed from her colleagues who held that the DHS, Department of Human Services, interpretation of that provision was unreasonable under Chevron Step 2. Barrett would have held that the new rule fell within the broad scope of discretion under the Immigration and Nationality Act. The public charge issue is the subject of a circuit split. In May of 2019, the court rejected a Yemenese citizen and her U.S. citizen's husband's challenge to a counselor's office to twice deny her visa application under the Immigration and Nationality Act. The U.S. citizen argued that this had deprived him of a constitutional right to live in the U.S. with his spouse. In a 2-to-1 majority opinion authored by Barrett, the court held that the plaintiff's claim was properly dismissed under the doctrine of consular non-reviewability. Barrett declined to address whether the husband had been denied a constitutional right to have his wife there because the consular's office decision to deny the visa application was legitimate. The consular's office decision seemed to be legitimate under a former Supreme Court precedent. So in that case, she was firm, siding with, I would say, stale rules about this decision regarding immigration because she was technically siding with Trump, making it stricter to have people come in our country, even though there is a law regarding you are a U.S. citizen and you are married, you may have your spouse stay here. I'm going to mention 2 more cases briefly. We have 2 co-hosts on the line, Don and John, and I'm very excited about that Don has returned to us. In abortion-related cases, Coney Barrett has never ruled directly on abortion, but she did vote to rehear a successful challenge to Indiana's parental notification law in 2019. In 2018, she voted against striking down another Indiana law requiring burial or cremation of fetal remains. In both cases, Barrett voted with the minority. The Supreme Court later reinstated the fetal remains law, and in July of 2020, it ordered a rehearing on the parental notification case. In February 2019, Barrett joined a unanimous panel decision upholding a Chicago bubble ordinance that prohibits the public approaching within a certain distance of an abortion clinic or its patrons without consent. Citing the Supreme Court's buffer zone decision in Hill versus Colorado, the court rejected the plaintiff's challenge to the ordinance on First Amendment grounds. In other words, Coney Barrett in that decision, she sided with what people would consider the liberals, that protesters and other such people cannot enter a certain range of an abortion clinic. Okay, I'm reading one more and then I'm getting into the co-host decisions. Second Amendment. In March of 2019, Barrett dissented with a court upholding a law prohibiting felons from possessing firearms. The majority rejected the applied challenge raised by the plaintiff, who had a nonviolent felony conviction of mail fraud, and upheld the felony dispossession statute as substantially related to an important government interest in preventing gun violence. In her dissent, Barrett argued that while the government had a legitimate interest in denying gun possession to felons convicted of violent crimes, there is no evidence that denying guns to nonviolent felons promotes this interest and that the law violates the Second Amendment. In other words, she thought it was okay for people who had non-violent felonies to possess guns. Pete Buttigieg apparently made some kind of synopsis of Amy Coney Barrett's opening statement. He said that nominees try to fly below the radar. They write the most seemingly unobjectionable dry stuff. But really what I see is there is a pathway to judicial activism, cloaked in judicial humility. At the end of the day, rights in this country have been expanded because the courts understood what the true meaning of the letter of the law was and the spirit of the Constitution. This is not about time traveling yourself back to the 18th century and subjecting yourself to the same prejudice and limitations as people who write these words. So obviously Pete Buttigieg wants to protect LGBTQ rights. As a Christian today, I felt that Amy Coney Barrett was certainly under attack in certain aspects of her religious beliefs. And she was also questioned about the George Floyd case. She's a mother of 7 kids, and 2 of her kids are Haitian adoptees. And she claimed that she sobbed with her Haitian daughter about what happened to George Floyd. Good evening, Don. How are you doing tonight? He's on the air, but he's AWOL. Hi, Don. Hi, John. John, you're on the air.
Hello, Jane. How are you doing?
Well, I find that reading court information is rather interesting, actually, even if it didn't involve Amy Coney Barrett. And I just think that studying court and court laws are very interesting. And the only squeeze that I technically feel regarding this nomination period is that they're only considering one person, and it does seem kind of rushed. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, I don't care about any of that. I just think that it seems a little rushed, being that the election's in about 2 weeks. So what's on your mind tonight?
Well, I think with the whole situation that it's true they are rushing it, and a lot of it is because we've seen the legal system fail us for years. And so the conservatives are stepping up, and the rules have been manipulated on both sides, and they're taking advantage of the situation. You know, a president is in charge for 4 years. He's not running things for 3.5 or even 3 years, 10 months. And you've seen for years, what have we been doing for the last almost 4 years? Investigating Donald Trump, investigating Michael Flynn. You realize that they investigated Flynn years ago. This court case has been, the prosecution for his case has dropped the case. It's like, well, we're not going to prosecute this. You know, the case is too compromised.
Who are they not going to prosecute?
Michael Flynn, the prosecution against him, the government, dropped the case. And listen,
Right, yes, I remember you mentioning that in the past.
This has been like over like 6 months. And then the judge is saying, well, no, I'm not going to let this go. Like, you're not going to let this go. You understand, like, a judge shows up and says, my job is to rule on, based on what the prosecution and the defense says, and then we have a jury that goes over that stuff, and then they give me a verdict, and then I will accept it, or whatever. He's saying, I'm going to just basically prosecute this thing myself. I'm going to be the judge, the jury, the prosecution all in one. And no one is like questioning this. And they re-appealed it, in which appeals court, and they said, listen, there's no case here, so decide. He says, like, I'm going to have some judges think about it. So they got some judges, a panel got together. They said, no case, judge, drop it. He said, you know what, let's keep going with this. You know how come? It's an election year. This is all about getting rid of Trump. There's no other agenda to this. So, yeah, are the Republicans, squeezing the ketchup ball, trying to get every little drop? Absolutely. And that's what's happening here. The judge should just jump over it.
I think if I were president and I had a strong idea who I wanted on the Supreme Court, I would go forward with it within the margin of thinking there's enough time and there wasn't much more chaos. But I did want to mention one more thing. It appears Wade will be calling in, but I did want to mention one more thing because I felt like I cut this short. So Amy Vivian Coney was her original name. She was born in 1972, so she's 12 years younger than me. She is the eldest of 7 children. She did grow up Catholic. Her father worked as an attorney for Shell Oil Company, and her mother was a high school French teacher. Her family were devout Catholic. She also, I just want to mention where she taught. After she got her law degree and stuff like that, she was a law clerk at Lawrence Silberman at the U.S. Court of Appeals, and she was also served under Antonin Scalia. She taught and was a visiting professor at George Washington University Law School in D.C., and then she went back to Notre Dame, where she taught federal courts, constitutional law, and statutory interpretation. In 2007, she went to the University of Virginia Law School and taught there. And by the way, she also taught at a Christian summer training program for law students called Alliance Defending Freedom, and she got some crap for that today during the hearing. So with that, let's see if Don is talking right now. Don, are you still with us? Oh wait, I gotta let him in. His call dropped and he called back in. Hi Don, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am. And hello,
I did call you, and
Don.
What happened earlier when I called you to the show?
No, my phone was stuck. It wouldn't move, so I had to reboot and recall back. I had to reboot that phone and call back. So it just.
So you're the only person who heard my introduction. First of all, tell us how your health is doing tonight.
Well, I'm doing fine. I'm still a little foggy or not weak. And so it's kind of like I haven't been able to get 100% well yet, but it's slowly coming. I'll have my last examinations from my final doctors probably in the next, tomorrow I start my last, and then next week I should be, I'll give them the okay to go ahead and start all of my activities again. So we'll just have to see how that works.
And I am going to pull Wade in a minute, but what did you think of my introduction on Amy Coney Barrett?
Well, hold on for a second, real quick. Hold on. Well, I looked at the introduction yesterday and quite a bit today. And in all essence, the Democrats have kind of a hill to climb unless they pull out, all the tricks. What's happening is there's
Yeah, would you mind stepping into a room where there's less noise?
I really can't right now, but I'll try to keep it down. But for the most part,
I'm cutting to a different part of the show now.
It must be lowered to 12, is a Hirschman's interpretation of a recommendation.
Here we go.
What are you talking about regarding Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Are you saying, like, if a 20-year-old had sex with a 15-year-old? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and views like that. In fact, I'll pull some of the stuff up. I mean, her views were very radical. I mean, we're talking from the 70s and 80s on life, where they were questioning everything. And, basically everything was on the table. Now, that didn't mean she voted that way. It didn't mean that she put that into her rulings, but that was her mindset. And that's the thing when you start dealing with these issues, there is a subliminal wave. So,
well, she was also Jewish. I don't know if I want to have that type of thing on my show without examining it first. Are you talking about the original hearings that she had when the court, when the Senate Judiciary Committee was reviewing her position for nomination?
I don't think those are positions that she was questioning on during her hearings. But what I'm saying is, if you look into her background, into things that she was just like, going through her thought processes, she was very open about talking about. In fact, I'll tell you what, let's put this one to the side. I'll pull up some stuff and I'll throw some things for you. I mean, she was very. I'm talking about 20 or 30 different things where you go like, what the heck are you talking about? Stuff that you won't bring to the family table.
Yeah.
But go ahead. And what I'm saying is that's what the counter to what Trump is bringing in. He's bringing in a conservative wave. All this situation we're having in the court, in all these cases, it's judges, it's attorneys. Hillary Clinton's a lawyer. Rosenstein is a lawyer. Booker's a lawyer. Kamala Harris is a lawyer. These are professional people who know the law, and they work the system. Trump's not a lawyer. Reagan wasn't a lawyer. They're just straight up, hey, here's what I think. I think this is dumb, or I think this is good. Let's do it. And lawyers are going, well, if you look at subsection 518, Article 3, you can't really do that. And they legally make decisions that have no common sense. But it's a technicality. And I think that's where American public, we're just tired of technicalities. We want the majority of people to move forward, and we can't because of the laws, because of situations. How many times does a verdict get overturned? 2 or 3 times. It gets reappealed. Then it goes to this district. Everything in the Russian collusion situation went to Southern District of New York. Why didn't it go there? It's a very liberal court. They're going to do whatever Washington, D.C. wants in that district. And, if you put it to a more conservative, it would have been, we'll throw this out. And, it's as simple as all the rulings. Just look at everyone that's been prosecuted. Manafort, Papadopoulos.
That's the thing that you were talking about. During in the 1993 hearings on Bader Ginsburg nomination, Susan Hirschman presented a claim as a fact in July of 93 saying the age of consent must be lowered to 12 is a Hirschman's interpretation of a recommendation put forth by Bader Ginsburg in a sex bias code. In 1993, Thomas Jipping similarly presented a series of arguments against Bader Ginsburg nomination, referencing a report co-authored by Ginsburg. He argued that in the report, Bader Ginsburg's recommendation, including drafting women into the military, legalizing prostitution, constitutionally protecting bigamy and lowering the age of consent to 12 years, blah, blah, blah. A section of that piece, page 95, describes how the law stood at the time. And the law said it is a crime for a person to have carnal knowledge, in other words, sleeping with a female who has not reached 16 years of age, and noted that the legal definition of rape assumed by an offender was a man and the victim was a woman, blah, blah, blah. The report argued that provisions clearly failed to comply with the equal rights principle. They failed to recognize that women of all ages are not only the target of sexual attack, men and women also can be victims of rape, men and boys.
Yeah.
Then they went on to continue the debate about rape, other sexual, definitions. So the verdict in this case is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg did not directly say that the consenting age should be 12. It stems from a false interpretation by third parties of legal recommendations presented by Ginsburg in the 70s.
Well, again, what you're doing is you're saying, we debunked this. No, you haven't debunked it. You took one article. Who wrote the article? What was it? What was it?
It wasn't an article. It was on Reuters fact check.
Reuters.
All I'm saying is I understood your point. Wait, stop. I understood your point saying that here Trump is nominating a conservative Christian Catholic female, and that he honorably chose to do so, but yet on the other hand, when Bader Ginsburg was nominated, there were some dark clouds about her morality in the 1993 hearings, and that there was questionable thoughts about her. That's what you're saying, so to speak, right?
No, what I'm saying is that she has made very public her views on these things. It's downplayed. And you'll take an article where they'll say, she didn't say the age should be 12. It should just say, minors or something like that. And you go, see, she never said 12. It's like, a 12-year-old is a minor or a 5-year-old. I'm just saying is if you check her statement, it's not just one statement. It's a whole thesis of stuff. And I'm sorry, I'm not at a computer right now because we kind of ventured down a different rabbit hole, but I'm just throwing that. I will.
Right, I would be willing to discuss that next week, but since Don hasn't been on the air in a month and Wade happily joined, even though he just punched the clock out, I would rather focus on this week's election.
I want to correct you. I have been on that last 2 out of 3 weeks I haven't been on, but I have been.
Barrett's background. And whether she chooses to teach at a Christian camp that identifies with her values, that's fine with me. But secondly, there are other people on the council like John Roberts who conservatives have been disappointed with because he hasn't always ruled in favor. And that's one of the major trends in political science nowadays is there active partisanship on the judge panel, or is there passive partisanship? In other words, can each of the 9 justices rule on the basis that they're not affected or influenced by what the current political state is?
They should. They should go with what's right.
Yeah, they should go by their own intuition and their knowledge of legal history. They're supposed to be non-partisan, in other words.
Well, that is an issue though, because that everyone knows that's not being done today. There's no way in hell that's being done. There was a subpoena for Hillary Clinton to turn in her records, and she deleted 33,000 emails, which, by the way, are being released, declassified without redaction. This is 4 years later. How can you defy a subpoena and delete
Do you understand what's happening? Oh, again, we're going way. Let's get all these Trump people. We have a person here. Not just her. The whole. They wiped 31 phones in the Mueller investigations. They wiped them.
Can you go through a whole show without having to vilify the same people when we're not even on that topic?
The court system and judges, and is this relevant to what's being said?
How would you like it if I spent 35 minutes on Donald Trump's illegal tax payments? Would you like me to do that?
Well, if they were illegal, yes. They're not illegal. He's a businessman. They take Amazon.
Yes, he illegally. He did not pay his full property taxes in the state of New York.
Boo-hoo.
But I don't want to tonight because we're supposed to be talking about headline news.
Again,
okay?
This is irrelevant to the situation. We're talking criminal. We're talking treason. We're talking
He is criminal. He owes over $14 million in taxes.
What? Hunter Biden. Hello. Hunter
Biden is not running for office.
What's wrong with the white judicial system?
Let's give Sean a chance to say something.
No, I'm just wondering what's wrong with the piece of shit white judicial system that has, had Jim Crow and slavery as an institution. And nobody says anything about that. What is wrong with making sure that Brown versus Board is one of the super cases that they were talking about? And
no one said anything. Slavery, we had a whole war over it.
Don, can you go into a quieter area now?
Which Jim Crow law is on the books right now?
The what?
What Jim Crow law is on the books and being enforced in the courts today? We're talking about today.
No, it's not. What's being enforced in the courts? I know it's one.
Well, tell me the case. Jim Crow law. Judge rules. Jim Crow law. You just threw it out there. Okay. What cases are being tried right now? Stutter. Yeah, I know. There's none. Of course. That's the end.
Voters' right. You got places where the post office is being railed, is being dismantled, and by some of its machinery. You're talking about one voting booth in Houston, Harris County.
You're talking about having mail-in voter for the first time. 100,000 ballots, by the way, thrown away. On my street, 20th and Pico, there were 3 buckets of mail thrown in the trash. Hello? This is
that's all right. That should be something the Supreme Court determines. Exactly what I mean. They have to determine what the regulations. What I'm saying is that the judges are extremely fallible. They really suck, and I know for a fact. So this is something that really is something that needs to be taken care of, and our judges are our last. Line of defense. And
I have something to add about this regarding the mail. Now, I've read a couple things from different states. There are some states when you mail your ballot in, like Minnesota and Wisconsin, where there's a tracker on it, and you can see if your ballot got into the state electorate office, and if it was scanned. So there are places where it is safe. Now, in Minnesota, we don't have any postal workers who dump. I don't know how the trash got in there in Santa Monica, but people don't, unless somebody's not living in the place where they're supposed to be living.
Part 2 will be in a few minutes. I hope you enjoy.